never thought we'd be in a situation where someone like Rev has done so much for the community would see her church shot up at a funeral. Just never could imagine it. Never.
We don't know where all these guns is coming from. We have no idea how young people are getting all these guns.
John's love for basketball began at the Pittsburgh Project, Urban Impact, Allegheny Elementary School, Allegheny Middle School, and Alderdice High School.
October 28, 2022, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A family gathers inside Destiny of Faith Church, their hearts heavy with grief, their voices soft with prayers. They've come to say goodbye to 20-year-old John James Hornezes Jr., a young man gunned down just days earlier. The pews are filled with mourners, mothers, brothers, friends, a newborn son who will never know his father. The air is thick with sorrow. But there's something else too, fear. The family had begged for police protection, knowing the volatile streets of Pittsburgh's north side could erupt at any moment. They were promised safety. They were promised peace. Gunshots, 20 of them, rip through the sacred silence. Two masked men, cloaked in black, unleash a hail of bullets on the church. Mourners scream, diving under pews. A grandmother is hit 13 times. A horse pulling the casket carriage collapses, wounded by shrapnel. 5 people are shot, a 6th injured in the chaos. This isn't a random act of violence. This is a calculated ambush, a brazen assault on a family already shattered by loss. And the most chilling detail? The police, who were supposed to be there, who were assigned to protect this grieving family, were nowhere to be found. How does a moment of mourning become a massacre? Why was a family's desperate plea for safety ignored? And who would dare turn a church, a place of solace, into a killing ground? By the end of this video, you'll understand the devastating chain of events that led to this tragedy, the failures that left a family vulnerable, and the ongoing fight for justice. But we need you to join us. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your thoughts, your reactions, your voices, they're part of this story. This isn't just a story about a shooting. It's about a community on edge, a family betrayed, and a system that failed when it was needed most. So, grab a coffee, settle in, and let's uncover the dark truth behind the Destiny of Faith Church shooting. Pittsburgh's north side is no stranger to violence. For decades, this tight-knit community has grappled with gang rivalries, turf wars, and the relentless grip of gun violence. But the attack on Destiny of Faith Church wasn't just another statistic. It was a violation of the sacred, a moment that stripped away any illusion of safety. The family of John Hornezes Jr. had already lost a son, a brother, a father. They had begged for protection, fearing retaliation from the same streets that claimed John's life. Their fears were dismissed, their trust shattered. This case raises questions that demand answers. How could a police department, aware of the escalating gang tensions, fail to protect a funeral? Who were the masked gunmen, and what drove them to such a heinous act? And how does a community heal when even a church becomes a battleground? As we dig deeper, we'll explore the life of John Hornezes Jr., the deadly shootout that claimed him, and the catastrophic oversight that left his family defenseless. John James Hornezes Jr. was only 20 years old when his life was stolen. To his family, he was more than a name in a news report. He was a son, a father, a dreamer, a young man with a quiet strength and a heart full of ambition. Born and raised on Pittsburgh's North Side, John grew up in a neighborhood where hope and hardship walked hand in hand. The North Side, with its historic row houses and tight-knit communities, was also a place where gang violence cast a long shadow. But John, known to his friends as JJ, refused to let the streets define him. From an early age, John found solace on the basketball court. At Pittsburgh Project Urban Impact, he honed his skills, his lanky frame weaving through defenders with ease. At Allegheny Middle School and later Alderice High School, he earned a spot on the varsity team, his quick footwork and sharp jump shot earning him respect from coaches and teammates alike. He was a leader, his godmother Paige Davis would later say. Not loud, not flashy, but the kind of kid who made everyone around him better. John's family remembers him as kind, respectful, and fiercely motivated. His mother, Tamika Horns, often spoke of his gentle spirit, the way he'd light up a room with his shy smile. Just 8 months before his death, John had become a father, a role he embraced with pride. He was so excited to be a dad, Tamika recalled in an interview with Pittsburgh's Action News 4. He'd hold his son and talk about all the things he'd teach him, how to shoot a basketball, how to be a good man. John was charting a future in construction, eager to provide for his young family. He had no criminal record, no history of violence. To those who knew him, he was a kid with a future, a kid who wanted to rise above the chaos of his neighborhood. But the North Side was a complicated place to grow up. Gang rivalries, like those between the Brighton Place Crips and the Commons, had turned streets into battlegrounds. Drug trafficking, racketeering, and gun violence were woven into the fabric of the community. Police reports later suggested John may have been loosely connected to a local group, but his family insisted he was no gang member. He was a kid caught in the wrong place, his godmother said. He wasn't out there living that life. John's life was a balancing act, navigating a neighborhood where loyalty to friends could blur into dangerous affiliations, where a wrong step could mean a bullet. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying. He had enrolled in a construction training program, dreaming of building homes instead of tearing them down. He talked about moving his family to a safer neighborhood, giving his son a chance at a different life. He had plans, Tamika said, her voice breaking. He wasn't just another statistic. John's 8-month-old son was his world. Friends described how he'd light up when talking about fatherhood, how he'd carry photos of his baby in his wallet. He wanted to be the dad he never had, a childhood friend told reporters. John's family was his anchor, his mother Tamika, who worked long hours to keep the family afloat, his godmother Paige, who saw him as her own son, and a tight circle of cousins and friends who shared his love for basketball and late-night talks about the future. John's dreams were simple but profound. A steady job, a safe home, a future for his son. But on October 15th, 2022, those dreams were shattered at a Sunoco gas station on Cedar Avenue. A single moment of violence would not only take John's life, but set the stage for a tragedy that would ripple through his family, his community, and a city left reeling. John's death wasn't just a personal loss. It was a blow to a community already battered by violence. Neighbors described him as a familiar face, the kid who'd wave as he walked to the corner store, the teenager who'd help carry groceries for an elderly neighbor. His death sent shockwaves through the North Side, fueling fear and anger. "We're losing our kids," a local pastor said at a community meeting. And for what? Turf? Revenge? As John's family prepared for his funeral, they carried not just grief, but dread. They knew the streets were restless, that the violence that took John could strike again. They took a desperate step, one that should have changed everything. They begged the Pittsburgh police for protection. What happened next would turn a moment of mourning into a nightmare, exposing failures that no one could have imagined. It's just before noon on October 28th, 2022, and the pews of Destiny of Faith Church in Pittsburgh's Brighton Heights are filled. Over 100 mourners have gathered to honor John James Hornezes Jr., a 20-year-old whose life was cut short just 2 weeks earlier. The air smells of lilies and candle wax, the soft hum of organ music filling the sanctuary. John's mother, Tamika, sits in the front row, clutching a photo of her son. His newborn son, too young to understand, rests in her arms. The casket, adorned with white roses, stands at the altar, a stark reminder of a life stolen too soon. The family had taken every precaution. They knew the risks. John's death in a gang-related shootout on October 15th had heightened tensions on the north side. Rumors of retaliation swirled like smoke. Fearing the worst, Tamika and her family formally requested police protection for the funeral. The Pittsburgh police approved the request, assigning officers to stand guard. For a fleeting moment, the family felt a fragile sense of safety, a thin shield against the violence that had already taken so much. Just as the pastor begins the eulogy, a sound like thunder cracks through the church. 5 gunshots, then 15 more, a total of at least 20 rounds. 2 masked figures, dressed in black, appear at the church's front lawn on Benton Avenue. They fire indiscriminately toward the vestibule where mourners are gathered. Inside, chaos erupts. People scream, scrambling under pews. A grandmother struck 13 times collapses in a pool of blood. A young man clutches his foot, a bullet lodged in his bone. A woman, shot in the leg, hand and foot, limps toward the church doors, her face contorted in pain. Outside, the scene is pandemonium. Surveillance footage captures the 2 gunmen, one sprinting toward the church entrance, firing as he runs, chasing a man who appears to be hit. The other stands on the lawn, unloading his weapon into the crowd. A bullet fragment strikes one of the horses pulling John's casket carriage, causing it to collapse in distress. Mourners spill out of the church, some crawling, others running for their lives. The attack lasts less than a minute, but it feels like an eternity. 6 people are wounded, 5 from gunfire, 1 injured while fleeing. Emergency crews swarm the scene, their sirens piercing the air as they rush the victims to hospitals. The church, a place meant for solace, is now a crime scene, its walls scarred with bullet holes, its sanctity violated. As the smoke clears, a devastating truth emerges. The police officers assigned to protect the funeral were not there. The family's desperate plea for safety, their formal request for a visible police presence, had been approved. Officers were dispatched, but they went to the wrong funeral home. Finding no activity, they left. The shield that should have stood guard was absent, leaving the mourners defenseless against a calculated ambush. The pastor of Destiny of Faith Church, his voice trembling, later called it one of the most devastating days of my life. Pittsburgh Mayor Ed Gainey, visibly shaken, echoed the sentiment. I never could have imagined that we would shoot up holy ground. For John's family, the betrayal was unimaginable. They had trusted the system to protect them, and the system had failed. Witnesses described a scene of sheer terror. One victim, a 24-year-old man shot in the foot, told reporters he ran and kept running until I was safe. Another, a woman hit in multiple places, was too afraid to speak on camera, fearing retaliation. I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything, her family told KDKA News, their voices thick with fear. The community reeled, grappling with the audacity of an attack on a church, a place meant to be untouchable. As investigators descended on the church, combing through surveillance footage and shell casings, one question burned above all others. Who would dare turn a funeral into a bloodbath? The answer lay in the streets of the North Side, in a cycle of violence that had already claimed John Hornezes and was far from finished. The shooters who desecrated Destiny of Faith Church were not ghosts. They were teenagers, driven by a deadly vendetta. Pittsburgh police, leveraging a network of surveillance cameras, quickly identified the perpetrators: Hezekiah Nixon, just 16 years old, and Sean Davis, 19. Surveillance footage from the church and nearby streets painted a chilling picture of premeditation. 24 minutes before the shooting, the two were seen casing the church, lurking across the street at a restaurant, watching the mourners arrive. They returned at 11:57 a.m., guns drawn, and opened fire with ruthless precision. Nixon and Davis were arrested later that day on the McKees Rocks Bridge, a dramatic chase ending with Nixon throwing a black handgun with an extended magazine into the river. Davis dropped his weapon on the roadway. Forensic evidence sealed their fate. Gunshot residue on Nixon's clothing and Davis's gloves and jacket, clothing matching the surveillance footage, and a black Hyundai Elantra registered to Davis, captured fleeing the scene. Police described the funeral shooting as a targeted act, a brutal escalation in an ongoing gang dispute. To understand the motive, we must rewind to October 15, 2022, when John Hornezes Jr. was killed at a Sonoco gas station on Cedar Avenue. That night, a shootout between rival groups, the Brighton Place Crips and the Commons, left 3 dead, including John and 2 innocent bystanders, Betty Averirt and Jacqueline Mihalik. The gas station shooting was a chaotic clash. Jalon Hines, a friend of John's, confronted a Hyundai Palisade driven by Samuel Pegas, with Sharon Troutman in the passenger seat. When Troutman brandished a weapon, Hines opened fire, sparking a deadly exchange. John, police later alleged, joined the fray, chasing the SUV and firing. In the crossfire, Betty Averirt, a grandmother of 11, and Jacqueline Mihalik, a mother of 4, were killed at a nearby bus stop. John was also fatally shot, a gun found beside him. Investigators determined the gas station shooting was gang-related, a turf war that had been simmering for months. The funeral shooting, police believe, was retaliation, an attempt to target those connected to John or his group, the Commons. Nixon and Davis, linked to the Brighton Place Crips, saw the funeral as an opportunity to strike. Hezekiah Nixon was a teenager with a troubled past, already known to police for minor offenses. Sean Davis, slightly older, had ties to the Crips, though his full criminal history remains unclear. Their attorneys argued the surveillance footage was inconclusive, claiming the masked figures were unidentifiable. But the evidence, gunshot residue, matching clothing, the Hyundai Elantra, was damning. The motive, while rooted in gang rivalry, carried a chilling psychological weight. Nixon and Davis didn't just shoot, they planned. They cased the church, waited for the perfect moment, and fired with intent to terrorize. Was it revenge for John's role in the gas station shootout, or a broader message to the Commons? The exact trigger remains murky, but the intent was clear: to instill fear, to assert dominance, to keep the cycle of violence spinning. Early reports speculated the funeral shooting might have been random, a senseless act of violence, but police quickly dismissed this, pointing to the premeditation and targeted nature of the attack. Another theory suggested a specific mourner was the intended target, possibly someone linked to the gas station incident. The man chased by one of the gunmen, seen limping in the footage, remains unidentified, fueling speculation. Could he have been the real target, with others caught in the crossfire? The suspect's youth added another layer of complexity. At 16 and 19, Nixon and Davis were barely adults, yet capable of such calculated violence. Were they acting on orders from higher-ranking gang members, or was this a personal vendetta? The answers remain elusive, but the arrests marked a critical step in unraveling the truth. The most gut-wrenching twist in this tragedy wasn't the shooting itself. It was the absence of the police who were supposed to protect John Hornezes Jr.'s funeral. The family's formal request for a police presence had been approved. Officers were assigned, their presence confirmed. Yet, when the gunmen opened fire, No officers were there. The reason? A catastrophic oversight. The officers went to the wrong funeral home, found it empty, and left. This failure wasn't just a logistical error. It was a betrayal of trust. The Pittsburgh police knew the North Side was a powder keg. They knew John's death was tied to a gang shootout. They knew the funeral was a high-risk event. Yet, a breakdown in coordination, described by the Citizen Police Review Board as a quiet malfunction, left the mourners exposed. Officers assigned to the detail were reportedly suspended, but for John's family, the damage was done. The investigation moved swiftly. Surveillance footage from the church, combined with traffic cameras, provided a clear timeline. Nixon and Davis were seen casing the church 24 minutes before the attack, their movements deliberate. The black Hyundai Elantra, registered to Davis, was traced to an address in McKees Rocks. When police spotted the suspects leaving the house, a chase ensued, ending with their arrest on the McKees Rocks Bridge. Forensic evidence, gunshot residue, matching clothing, and discarded weapons linked them definitively to the crime. In February 2023, a judge ruled that Nixon and Davis would face trial for criminal attempt homicide, aggravated assault, and firearms violations. Prosecutors presented damning surveillance footage, showing the suspects firing at the crowd, one chasing a limping victim. The defense argued the footage was inconclusive, but the judge disagreed. The case was set for a formal arraignment in March, a step toward justice, but not without complications. The investigation into John's death revealed its own twists. John Hornezes, charged with the murders of Betty Averiart and Jacqueline Mahalik, claimed self-defense, arguing he fired only after Sharon Troutman brandished a weapon. Troutman, initially charged with John's homicide, saw those charges dropped in January 2023 when ballistic evidence proved he couldn't have fired the fatal shot. He later pleaded guilty to aggravated assault and firearms charges, receiving an 8-year sentence. Samuel Peggis, the driver, also had homicide charges dropped, but faced trial on other counts. The legal proceedings exposed the tangled web of the North Side's gang conflicts. John, police alleged, was an active participant in the gas station shootout, a claim his family fiercely disputed. The truth, whether John was a victim or a player in the violence, remains contested, adding layers of complexity to the narrative. The police failure sparked outrage. The Citizen Police Review Board launched an inquiry, with Beth Pittenger arguing that the circumstances of John's death should have prompted a constant police presence, request or not. Community leaders demanded accountability, questioning how such a critical oversight could occur. This wasn't just a mistake, one activist told KDKA News. It was negligence. The media amplified the story, with outlets like KDKA and Pittsburgh's Action News 4 airing survivor accounts and surveillance footage. Public opinion shifted from shock to anger, with many calling for reforms in police protocols. The failure at Destiny of Faith Church became a symbol of broader systemic issues, how urban communities, plagued by violence, are often left to fend for themselves. As of June 27, 2025, the Destiny of Faith Church shooting remains an open wound for Pittsburgh's North Side. Hezekiah Nixon and Sean Davis, now 19 and 22, respectively, await trial for the funeral attack. Charged with criminal attempt homicide, aggravated assault, and firearms violations, their cases are mired in legal complexities. The surveillance footage, while damning, has been challenged by defense attorneys who argue the suspects' identities are unclear. The trials, delayed by procedural hurdles, are expected to proceed later this year, but justice feels agonizingly slow for John's family and the 6 victims wounded that day. The investigation into the October 15th gas station shooting has seen partial resolution. John Hornezes faces trial for the murders of Betty Averiart and Jacqueline Mahalik, while Sharon Troutman serves an 8-year sentence for related charges. Samuel Peggis awaits trial on lesser counts. But the question of who killed John Hornezes Jr. remains unanswered, with ballistic evidence clearing initial suspects. For Tamika Horns, this ambiguity is a fresh wound. Her son's killer is still out there. The Pittsburgh police's failure to protect the funeral has not been forgotten. The Citizen Police Review Board's inquiry led to the suspension of the officers involved, but no public firings or formal sanctions have been announced. The department has promised to revise its protocols for high-risk events, but community trust remains fractured. "We begged for help," Tamika Horns told reporters, "and they let us down." Community leaders have called for systemic change, including better coordination between police and community organizations, increased funding for violence prevention programs, and stronger measures to combat gang activity. The North Side's cycle of violence, fueled by poverty, lack of opportunity, and easy access to guns, continues to claim lives. In 2024 alone, Pittsburgh reported 25 homicides, many linked to gang disputes. John James Hornezes Jr. was more than a victim of violence. He was a young man with dreams, a father with love to give, a son who made his mother proud. His life, though brief, touched countless others. Betty Averett, a grandmother who lived on the North Side for years, and Jacqueline Mihalik, a mother waiting for a bus, were innocent bystanders whose deaths remind us of the indiscriminate toll of gun violence. The 6 victims of the funeral shooting, still recovering from physical and emotional scars, carry the weight of that day's terror. Their stories demand we look beyond the headlines, beyond the statistics. They were people, loved, flawed, human. Their deaths, and the attack on Destiny of Faith Church, are a call to action, to break the cycle of violence, to rebuild trust, to ensure no family endures such betrayal again. The tragedy at Destiny of Faith Church is a stark reminder of the stakes in our communities. It's a story of loss, betrayal, and resilience, a story that challenges us to demand better. For John's family, for the North Side, for every community touched by violence, justice is more than a verdict. It's a commitment to change, to safety, to healing. We want to hear from you. What do you think should be done to break the cycle of gun violence in places like Pittsburgh's North Side? Have you or someone you know been affected by similar tragedies? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep this conversation alive. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe, and if this story moved you, subscribe to Dark Truth Files to join us in uncovering the truths that demand justice. Let's keep shining a light on the dark truths that need to be told.